Tell me, human, do you understand what it means when a princess chooses you? The question rolled through the royal hall of Illyria, and 300 nobles turned toward the only man in the room who wasn't listening. Ethan Cole was on one knee beneath a ceremonial platform, shoulder deep inside an open maintenance panel, trying to stop a coolant regulator from embarrassing the royal family. A thin mechanical whine trembled through the marble beneath him. Blue-white light spilled across his hands. The temperature gauge hovered at 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 degrees below palace standard. Ethan tightened the final coupling. The whine disappeared. Silence followed. Only then did he notice that nobody was talking. He slowly pulled his arm from the panel and looked over his shoulder. Princess Veilira stood 20 feet away. She was impossible to mistake for anyone else. Tall and composed, with deep teal skin, silver hair falling over one shoulder, and pale golden eyes that seemed almost luminous beneath the crystalline ceiling. Behind her waited the candidates for the royal bond, decorated commanders, planetary governors, heirs to ancient houses, men who had crossed star systems for the privilege of standing before her. Veilira walked past every one of them. Her ceremonial boots clicked softly against the polished floor. Ethan glanced behind himself, half expecting some important dignitary to be standing there. Nobody was. She stopped directly in front of him. Stand, human. Ethan looked at the open panel, then at the diagnostic tool in his hand. I'm working. Somewhere in the hall, someone inhaled sharply. Veilira's expression barely changed, but one silver eyebrow lifted. Ethan returned the tool to his belt and rose anyway. He was 6 feet 2, yet the princess still carried herself as though height were another form of authority. Ethan Cole, she said. That caught him. He had never introduced himself to her. Maintenance Systems Technician, Terran Delegation. That's what the badge says. Another silence. This one felt dangerous in a different way. At the edge of the platform, High Regent Theros stepped forward. His dark ceremonial robes whispered across the floor. Your Highness, the candidates are waiting. I know. Veilira never looked away from Ethan. Then perhaps we should continue the selection. We have. Theros stopped. Ethan saw confusion spread through the assembled nobles before anyone dared give it a voice. Veilira extended her hand toward the royal attendant. A small silver case opened with a pneumatic sigh. Inside rested a narrow band of translucent metal, glowing faintly at its center. Ethan knew enough Illyrian culture to recognize it. A bond circlet. He also knew enough to understand that it had absolutely nothing to do with coolant systems. Veilira took the circlet. Under the covenant of succession, the heir may choose any free and sentient individual as royal mate. Murmurs moved across the chamber like wind through dry leaves. Theros went pale. Your Highness, I choose Ethan Cole. The words landed softly. Their effect did not. Ethan stared at her. Behind Veilira, commanders who had conquered worlds looked as though someone had changed gravity without warning. Ethan searched the princess's face for amusement. There was none. Only calculation. And beneath it, something harder to name. Urgency, perhaps. Fear hidden beneath royal discipline. Suddenly Ethan understood one thing. This wasn't romance. It was an escape route, and somehow he had become the door. An attendant approached with the glowing circlet held carefully between both hands. Kneel and accept the royal bond. Ethan didn't move. Veilira's golden eyes narrowed slightly. For the first time that evening, the princess looked uncertain. Ethan glanced at the circlet, then at the hundreds of people waiting for him to obey. His voice remained quiet. What happens if I refuse? The silence lasted 3 seconds. Ethan counted them because everyone else seemed to have forgotten how. Princess Veilira lowered the glowing circlet, and the confidence in her golden eyes shifted into something more careful. You may refuse, she said. High Regent Theros turned sharply toward her. Your Highness, tradition requires acceptance once the selection is declared. Tradition, Veilira replied, is not law. Ethan almost smiled. Almost. He looked around the royal hall. 300 nobles watched him beneath 40-foot crystal arches, their ceremonial uniforms reflecting pale blue light across the polished floor. Somewhere beneath his boots, the coolant system resumed its steady mechanical hum. That sound felt more trustworthy than anything happening above it. Then I refuse. The reaction came as whispers. Veilira did not move. May I ask why? Ethan clipped his diagnostic tool back onto his belt. Because I met you about 4 minutes ago. A few faces tightened. Veilira stared at him, then gave the smallest nod. Reasonable. The Rose stepped between them. Mr. Cole, perhaps you do not understand what is being offered. Royal citizenship. A private residence. Financial compensation equivalent to several million Earth dollars. Ethan glanced at him. That makes this stranger not better. Veilira's expression changed again. Not anger. Curiosity. Then the Rose said quietly, there is another consideration. A holographic document appeared above his wrist. Ethan saw succession statutes, parliamentary seals, and one highlighted clause. If Veilira failed to establish a recognized bond before midnight, authority to select her mate transferred to the Royal Council. Ethan looked at the clock above the western arch, 11:23. He finally understood the urgency he had seen in her face. They already picked someone for you. Veilira's jaw tightened. Yes. Someone you do not want. That is irrelevant to the law. I did not ask about the law. For the first time, she looked away. That answered him. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had spent years avoiding other people's wars, political or otherwise. Apparently, the universe had developed a sense of humor. Show me the contract. The Rose handed him a glass-like tablet. Ethan read every page. Housing rights. Ceremonial duties. Public appearances. Succession restrictions. Then he found the section governing dissolution. His expression hardened. She cannot end this without council approval. Correct, the Rose said. Ethan handed the tablet back. Change it. The Rose blinked. Excuse me. Either person can terminate the bond at any time. No council. Vote. No penalty. No ownership rights over personal property. No authority over medical decisions. No restrictions on travel. The hall became quiet again. Veilira studied him as though he had suddenly started speaking an unknown language. You would demand the right for me to leave you? She asked. Ethan met her eyes. I am demanding the right for both of us to leave. The Rose protested, but Veilira raised one hand. Amended. 20 minutes later, the revised agreement glowed between them. Ethan signed. Veilira followed. The circlet closed around his wrist with a soft metallic click, warm for an instant before cooling against his skin. Applause spread through the hall, formal and uncertain. Ethan barely heard it. Veilira stepped closer. Why did you change your mind? He looked toward the nobles who had nearly decided her future for her. I did not. Her eyes narrowed. Ethan adjusted the unfamiliar band around his wrist. I am just buying you time. Hours later, 2 silent attendants escorted them into the royal bond chamber. One enormous bed occupied the center of the room. Ethan stared at it, then opened a storage cabinet, removed a spare blanket, and placed it on the floor beside the window. Veilira watched him. What are you doing? Ethan folded his jacket beneath his head. Sleeping. On the floor. It has been a strange day. He switched off the nearest lamp. In the darkness, Veilira remained motionless beside the bed, staring at the human she had chosen because she believed he would be easy to control. She was beginning to suspect she had understood absolutely nothing about him. At 6:12 the next morning, Veilira woke to the sound of metal clicking softly in the dark. Her eyes opened at once. Ethan was already standing beside the chamber door, barefoot and completely still, one hand resting against the wall panel. What is it? She whispered. Probably nothing. That was not reassuring. A faint vibration traveled through the floor. Ethan tilted his head as if listening to something beneath the palace itself. Then the ventilation system stopped. The quiet that followed felt wrong. Veilira sat upright. The environmental cycle pauses every morning for filtration. For 4 seconds, Ethan said, "We are at 9. He crossed the room and opened the manual controls. His fingers moved quickly over the interface. Veilira watched the sleep disappear from his face. The relaxed maintenance worker from yesterday was gone. In his place stood someone focused, economical, and strangely calm. The ventilation returned with a low rush. Ethan stared at the diagnostic display. Someone changed the pressure schedule. Could it be an error? Could be. His tone said otherwise. Before Veilira could ask more, a soft chime announced the morning procession. Ethan stepped away from the panel and became ordinary again so quickly that she wondered whether she had imagined the change. 2 hours later, they entered the Eastern Reception Gallery for their first public appearance. Sunlight from Illyria's pale star poured through crystal windows 70 feet high. Diplomatic drones floated above the crowd, transmitting the new royal bond across the planet. Ethan wore a simple dark Terran suit. Veilira noticed he had chosen a position half a step behind her, close enough to hear, but far enough to make clear that the ceremony belonged to her. "You dislike crowds," she murmured. "I dislike rooms with too many exits. Most people dislike rooms with too few. Most people are smarter than me." She almost smiled. A ceremonial drone descended toward them carrying 2 silver cups for the traditional welcome. Ethan's eyes moved to it. Something changed in his expression. The drone was descending too quickly. Not dramatically. Perhaps 3 miles per hour faster than the others. Nobody else seemed to notice. Ethan did. Veilira, step left. She hesitated. Why? Now. There was no royal title in his voice. She moved. Ethan reached up, caught the drone by its lower service rail, and rotated it away from the gathering. Its stabilizers sputtered. The silver cups slid harmlessly onto an empty table as Ethan pressed the emergency release beneath its chassis. The machine powered down with a disappointed electronic chirp. The gallery fell silent. Palace technicians hurried forward. Ethan handed them the drone. Navigation fault. 1. Technician examined the controls. The guidance restrictions were disabled. Veilira looked at Ethan. How did you know? It was moving wrong. You saw that from across the room? Ethan adjusted his sleeve. I fix machines. It was a reasonable answer. She no longer believed it. Later, inside a private elevator, Veilira watched the numbers climb toward the royal residence. Ethan stood beside the doors instead of beside her. His eyes checked the ceiling camera, the emergency hatch, then the reflection behind them. Maintenance technicians do that often? She asked. Do what? Count exits. Watch hands. Notice malfunctioning machines before their own operators. Ethan looked at her reflection. I have had unusual jobs. The elevator opened. He stepped out first, scanned the corridor without appearing to scan it, then waited for her. Veilira remained inside for 1 extra second. 6 years of public records described Ethan Cole as an ordinary systems technician. 6 years. Nothing before that. No school records. No childhood registration. No employment history. No family archive. The doors began to close. Veilira stopped them with her hand and looked at the quiet human waiting outside. Yesterday, she had chosen him because she believed he was the safest man in the palace. This morning, she began wondering what kind of man needed 6 years of history to look ordinary. By noon, Veilira had learned something unsettling about Ethan Cole. The less attention he received, the more he noticed. He stood quietly beside the western windows of her private study while she reviewed trade petitions, appearing absorbed in a maintenance report on his tablet. Yet every few minutes his eyes moved. Door, ceiling vent, service corridor, window reflection, then back to the tablet. You are doing it again, Veilira said. Ethan looked up. Doing what? Pretending not to watch everything. I am reading about your palace ventilation. Fascinating. Terrible. She almost laughed. The sound surprised her enough that she stopped. Ethan returned to the report without commenting. That somehow made it worse. Everyone around Veilira reacted to her. They bowed, flattered, calculated. Ethan simply existed in the same room. An hour later, he interrupted her meeting with 3 economic ministers by walking to the climate controls and lowering the temperature 2 degrees. Veilira stared at him. Did you just alter a royal chamber during a state meeting? Yes. Why? Your breathing changed. The ministers became very interested in their documents. Veilira felt heat rise beneath her teal skin. My breathing. Ethan pointed toward the atmospheric monitor. Carbon dioxide is climbing. This room was designed for Illyrian physiology, but somebody recalibrated the circulation for Terran settings after the bond announcement. Your species runs better with slightly different humidity and oxygen balance. He tapped the panel twice. Cool air whispered from the vents. Within seconds, the pressure behind Veilira's eyes eased. She had assumed it was exhaustion. How did you know? You kept rubbing your left thumb against your index finger. She looked down. She was doing it again. That indicates atmospheric discomfort? No. It indicates you were uncomfortable. The monitor told me why. One minister cleared his throat. Ethan stepped back toward the window as though nothing unusual had happened. Veilira finished the meeting, but she remembered almost none of it. That evening, she found a small covered tray outside her study. No royal crest. No attendant. Inside were mineral cakes from the eastern provinces, the kind Illyrian children were traditionally given during long examinations. Beside them sat a handwritten note. You skipped lunch. Ethan was in the adjoining room repairing a faulty light panel. You left this? She asked. Apparently. Royal meals are prepared by 12 chefs. And apparently none of them noticed you did not eat. Veilira looked at the tray. What do you want from me, Ethan? The tool in his hand stopped. For once, he did not answer immediately. Nothing. Everyone wants something. Then I am disappointing everyone. She studied him in the amber light. Yesterday I selected you because you were beneath the notice of this court. Ethan nodded. I figured. Does that offend you? Should it? I used you. He closed the maintenance panel. Carefully. You were cornered. That does not excuse it. No. The simple agreement struck harder than forgiveness would have. Ethan picked up his tools. But you changed the contract when I asked. That matters. Veilira watched him leave. Later that night, curiosity defeated protocol. She opened the restricted Terran archive and entered his name. 6 years of records appeared. Maintenance certifications. Civilian transport licenses. Engineering contracts. Nothing before them. She tried biometric indexing instead. The system paused. A red seal appeared across the screen. Terran Federal Archive. Identity record restricted. Veilira leaned closer. Ordinary technicians did not have federal identity locks. Behind her, the ventilation hummed softly at the exact setting Ethan had chosen. On the desk, the mineral cakes remained warm. For the first time, Veilira was no longer wondering why Ethan hid his past. She was wondering why a man with a sealed identity had spent the entire day noticing things about her that her own palace had missed. The palace lost power at 2:17 in the morning. Veilira woke before the emergency lights came on, not because of an alarm, but because the room had become completely silent. The ventilation stopped. The temperature controls died. Even the faint electrical vibration beneath the floor vanished. Then a soft amber strip illuminated along the base of the walls. Across the chamber, Ethan was already awake. Stay here, he said. Veilira sat up. You do remember this is my palace. Then you know where they keep the flashlights. Ethan. He paused at the door. She could barely see his face in the emergency glow. I am coming with you. 30 seconds later, they were moving through a service corridor behind the royal apartments. The passage was narrow, barely 4 feet wide, lined with coolant pipes and fiber conduits. Ethan carried a portable lamp, while Veilira used her royal access key to open sealed doors. Main generators should have restored power within 12 seconds, she said. They did not. I noticed. That was sarcasm. I noticed that too. Despite herself, she smiled. They reached the observation junction, connecting the royal wing to the environmental control network. The door sealed behind them with a heavy mechanical click. At that exact moment, every emergency light went dark. Blackness swallowed the room. Veilira stopped. Somewhere nearby, Ethan's lamp clicked once, then failed. Battery, she asked. No. Electromagnetic interruption. That sounds worse. It sounds expensive. She heard him move, then the quiet scrape of a manual panel opening. A moment later, starlight appeared as Ethan released the observation shutters by hand. Beyond the glass, Illyria curved beneath them, blue oceans shining under silver clouds. The city lights were dark for miles around the palace. Veilira stood beside the window. Ethan joined her, leaving a respectful distance between them. For several seconds neither spoke. Without the palace systems humming around them, the silence felt enormous. I lied to you, Veilira finally said. Ethan looked toward her. About why I chose you. I assumed there was more to it. There were governors in that hall who wanted access to my trade authority. Commanders who wanted control of the fleet. Noble heirs who wanted my family name. She watched the planet below. You were repairing a pipe. Coolant regulator. That distinction seems very important to you. Professionally, yes. Her smile faded gently. You were the only person in that room who wanted nothing from me. Ethan remained quiet. I thought that made you safe, she continued. Then you refused me in front of the entire court. Sorry about that. Do not be. Nobody had ever done it before. She turned toward him. That may have been the first honest thing anyone offered me in years. Ethan looked back through the glass. Something old passed across his face, visible for only a second. Being chosen for the wrong reason can still put you in the right place. You speak from experience. His silence answered before he did. Maybe. Veilira studied him. Why did you agree, Ethan? Because you needed time. That cannot be the whole reason. It was enough. The darkness seemed softer now. Veolyra stepped closer, not touching him, simply standing beside him as an equal rather than several feet away as protocol demanded. That may be the first good reason anyone has ever chosen me, Ethan said quietly. The words carried no humor this time. Veolyra looked at him, surprised by the sadness hidden inside them. Then the emergency lights flickered back to life. Ethan turned toward the control panel, and his collar shifted slightly. Beneath it, just above his shoulder, Veolyra saw a thin circular scar surrounding 3 faded contact points. Her breath caught. She knew that pattern. Every royal child studied military technologies of the major interstellar powers. Terran Neural Command interfaces were restricted to specialized deep space personnel. Ethan noticed where she was looking. He pulled his collar back into place. Too late. Ethan, she said softly. The palace power returned with a deep mechanical hum. He faced the control panel instead of her. And in the sudden brightness, the man beside Veolyra seemed more mysterious than he ever had in the dark. Veolyra waited until sunrise before searching for the man sleeping 20 feet from her. Ethan had returned to the royal bond chamber after restoring the environmental network, placed his jacket beneath his head, and fallen asleep on the floor as though nothing had changed. Veolyra had not slept at all. At 7:30, she entered her private archive room and sealed the door. Pale morning light crossed the glass console as she entered her royal authorization code. Terran Military Neural Interface Identification, she said. The system requested a biometric reference. Veolyra uploaded the security image from the observation junction. 3 seconds passed. Access restricted appeared across the display. She tried the name Ethan Cole. Civilian records filled the screen. 6 years. Nothing earlier. She searched by facial geometry instead. The archive processed for nearly a minute before displaying a single encrypted result. Terran Deep-Space Command. Personnel record sealed. Veolyra leaned closer. Royal Diplomatic Override. The system hesitated, then released one line. Cole, Nathaniel Ethan. Commander. Everything beneath it remained locked. Her stomach tightened. There is no Ethan Cole. The voice behind her made her turn. High Regent Theros stood inside the doorway. Veolyra had not heard it open. How did you enter? This palace served the crown before you were born. His eyes moved toward the screen. You finally became curious. What do you know? Theros approached the console. Enough to know your maintenance worker once belonged to a Terran Command division whose records are sealed above diplomatic clearance. Veolyra looked back at the name. Nathaniel Ethan Cole. Commander. The words felt incompatible with the man who complained about palace ventilation and left food outside her office. Why was he here? That is the question you should have asked before binding him to the succession. Theros placed a data crystal on the console. Perhaps Earth placed him here. Perhaps your convenient choice was never yours at all. Veolyra did not touch the crystal. You have evidence? I have concerns. Those are not the same thing. Theros's expression cooled. Your father taught you caution. My father taught me not to confuse suspicion with proof. She left him standing beside the console. Ethan was in the Eastern Service Gallery when she found him, crouched beside an atmospheric relay with 3 palace technicians watching him work. The secondary converter is cycling 6% too fast, he said. Replace it before evening. One technician nodded. Ethan stood and saw Veolyra. He knew immediately. She could tell by the stillness in his face. Walk with me, she said. They crossed the upper garden in silence. Artificial rain had ended minutes earlier, leaving silver droplets on the blue leaves. Finally, Veolyra stopped beneath a transparent canopy. Nathaniel. Ethan's footsteps stopped behind her. For several seconds, only water ticking against glass filled the space between them. Nobody calls me that anymore. Commander Cole. His eyes closed briefly. Not fear. Weariness. Where did you find it? You have spent several days noticing everything about me. I decided to return the favor. Ethan looked toward the distant city. Fair enough. Were you placed in this palace to reach me? No. Are you working for the Terran government? No. Were you ever? A longer silence. Yes. Veolyra felt something inside her tighten. Then tell me what you were. Ethan met her eyes. I cannot. Cannot. Or will not. Both. She wanted anger. It would have been easier. Instead, she remembered the amended contract, the mineral cakes, the blanket on the floor, The way he had restored her air before she knew anything was wrong. "Did you lie to me?" she asked. Ethan considered the question carefully. "I did not tell you everything." "That sounds like the answer of a diplomat. That is probably the meanest thing you have said to me." Against her will, a small laugh escaped her. It vanished quickly. Ethan's expression softened. "Veilira, whatever my old file says, I am not here because of you." "Then why are you here?" He looked down at his hands. The hands of a maintenance worker. The hands of a commander. Somehow both were true. "Because 6 years ago, I made a choice." Before he could say more, every communication panel in the garden illuminated red. A palace announcement echoed through the canopy. By order of the Royal Council, all Terran personnel were confined pending investigation. Veilira turned toward the palace. Ethan did not. He was watching the security doors closing one by one around the garden. "That," he said quietly, "is not a security precaution." Veilira looked at him. "What is it?" Ethan listened to the locks engage. "Someone just made sure I cannot leave." The locks finished closing with a sound like distant thunder, one after another, until the garden became a glass cage above the sleeping city. Ethan walked to the nearest security panel and pressed his thumb against the manual release. "Nothing." "Royal override," Veilira said. "Only the council can seal this level." "Then your council has been busy." A communication screen flickered to life. High Regent Theros appeared beneath the royal crest, perfectly composed. "Your Highness, remain where you are. Terran intelligence activity has been discovered inside the palace." Veilira looked at Ethan. "Evidence." Commander Cole concealed his identity. "That is not evidence of espionage." "The council disagrees." Theros paused. "You will be escorted to the succession chamber. Mr. Cole will be transferred to Terran custody." Ethan studied the screen. "How generous." Theros ignored him. "The royal bond will be suspended. Your previously approved match will be restored." There it was. Not security. Not investigation. The marriage they had tried to force on her from the beginning. Veilira stepped closer to the screen. "I will not consent." Consent is no longer required under emergency succession authority. The transmission ended. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Ethan opened a maintenance hatch beneath the garden controls. "There is a service route to the western shuttle platform." Veilira stared at him. "How do you know that?" "I read the building plans." "All of them." "Your ventilation really is terrible." 10 minutes later, they emerged into a narrow maintenance corridor. Emergency lights painted the walls amber. Ethan moved without hesitation, choosing intersections before Veilira could read the signs. At the western platform, a small diplomatic shuttle waited beneath an open launch shield. Ethan powered the cockpit. Systems awakened in soft blue lines. "This can reach the Terran embassy in 11 minutes, he said. Veilira sat beside him. "And then, you request diplomatic protection. The council cannot legally remove you from Terran territory. And my people?" Ethan stopped entering coordinates. Outside the windshield, the capital stretched toward the horizon, millions of lights beneath the violet dawn. Veilira watched them in silence. "If I leave now, Theros controls the succession," she said. "He controls the fleet, the trade courts, everything my father spent 30 years reforming." Ethan's hand rested above the ignition. "If you stay, they will separate us." "I know. They may force the old agreement through." "I know." He looked at her. "Veilira, I can get you out." She turned toward the city. Somewhere below were people waking for work, opening shops, sending children to school, unaware that their government had changed while they slept. Her voice became very quiet. "My people are still here." Ethan looked at the waiting flight path. One button. 11 minutes. Freedom. Then he reached forward and shut the engines down. The cockpit became silent. Veilira turned to him. "What are you doing?" Ethan removed the escape coordinates from the navigation system. "If your people are still here, then so are we." She stared at him. "You have no obligation to them." "No. You have no obligation to me. I made certain of that contract myself." "I remember." "Then why stay?" Ethan looked through the windshield. "Because leaving is easy when only your own life changes." Before Veilira could answer, his tablet chimed. He pulled up the palace network. The morning power failure. The altered environmental settings. The ceremonial drone. The sealed Terran records. Each incident carried the same hidden administrative authorization. Ethan enlarged the signature. "Theros, High Regent." Veilira went still. "He authorized all of them." Looks that way. Can we prove it publicly? Ethan's expression changed. That same quiet focus she had seen before returned. Not from here. Where? He pointed toward the tallest structure in the palace complex. The Royal Communications Spire. That system can broadcast directly to every civilian network on Illyria. Veolyra looked at the tower, then at him. The Council controls it. For now. She expected him to sound brave. He did not. He sounded like a technician discussing a broken machine. Somehow that made her trust him more. Veolyra opened the shuttle door. Ethan followed. Days ago, she had chosen him because she needed someone harmless enough to become her escape. Now the escape waited behind them, untouched. And for the first time since the ceremony, neither of them was being forced to stay. The Royal Communications Spire was not designed to keep out a maintenance technician. Ethan knew that before they reached the first service door. The palace security network trusted uniforms, clearance codes, and machines that reported what they were told to report. Ethan trusted none of those things. He opened a narrow utility panel, rerouted 2 fiber connections, and watched the lock change from red to blue. You learned that repairing coolant systems? Veolyra asked. Something like that. They climbed the final 2 levels, through a maintenance stairwell, and entered the broadcast chamber just as the morning sun cleared the horizon. Golden light poured through the curved windows. Hundreds of communication channels floated above the central console. Veolyra inserted her royal authorization key. Access denied. Ethan connected his tablet instead. The Rose removed your privileges. Can you restore them? Maybe. His fingers moved across the controls. Then he stopped. A new file had appeared on his screen, released automatically when the palace network recognized his old biometric signature. Veolyra saw the Terran seal. Helios Gate Incident. Authorized personnel only. Ethan stared at it without moving. That is you, she said. He nodded. 6 years ago. The file opened. A recording filled the chamber with an older voice. Ethan's voice. Calm. Tired. Civilian transports have not cleared the gate. I will maintain the corridor. Another voice answered through static. Commander Cole, Fleet Command orders immediate closure. Veolyra looked at Ethan. His face had become unreadable. The recording continued. There are 12,000 civilians still crossing. They are not Terran citizens. A pause. Then Ethan's younger voice answered. They are still civilians. Veolyra felt the room become very quiet. Data followed. Helios Gate had been collapsing during an evacuation. Terran Command ordered the passage closed to protect military vessels on the safe side. Ethan had refused. He kept the transit corridor operating long enough for the remaining evacuation ships to cross. Most of the passengers were alien refugees. The decision ended his career. The official report called it insubordination. The civilian records called it something else. 12,000 lives preserved. Ethan closed the file. Now you know. Veolyra could barely reconcile the record with the man standing beside her. They punished you for that. I disobeyed a lawful command. To save 12,000 people. Command does not become optional because you dislike the arithmetic. Then why did you do it? Ethan looked toward the sunrise. Because their arithmetic was wrong. Veolyra waited. They counted ships, he said. I counted people. No pride. No demand that she admire him. Just 6 years of silence compressed into 7 words. She finally understood why he had asked for her freedom before accepting the bond. Why he noticed exits. Why he watched environmental systems. Why he had remained when the shuttle could have carried him away. This was not the first time Ethan Cole had been given a safe door and chosen not to walk through it, while others remained behind. Why hide this, she asked. Because people hear Commander and expect someone I stopped being. What did you become? Ethan looked down at the maintenance tool clipped to his belt. Useful. A warning tone interrupted them. The Rose had begun shutting down the communications grid. Channel after channel disappeared. Ethan turned back to the console. We have about 90 seconds. Veolyra inserted her royal key again, while Ethan routed the Helios authentication through the civilian network. This time the console flashed green. Broadcast access restored. Every channel on the display opened at once. Millions of receivers across Illyria connected to the chamber. Veolyra looked at Ethan. Stand beside me. He shook his head. This is your world. And this is your evidence. Then use it. He stepped away from the console, leaving the center of the room to her. Veolyra faced the broadcast lens as Theros's authorization records appeared behind her. For most of her life, men had stood beside her because they wanted a piece of her throne. Ethan Cole had just handed her the truth and stepped out of the frame. And suddenly Veolyra understood what he really was. Not a commander hiding inside a technician. Not a hero waiting to be recognized. Simply a man who believed that power mattered most when you were willing to give it away. By sunrise, every public screen on Illyria carried the same records. Authorization codes. Altered environmental systems. Restricted palace orders. The Emergency Succession Directive. Veolyra did not accuse the Rose of anything the evidence could not prove. She simply placed each record before her people and let the truth stand without decoration. By noon, the Royal Council suspended the emergency decree. By evening, independent magistrates had assumed control of the investigation. The Rose surrendered his administrative authority without resistance. The palace became strangely quiet afterward. No alarms. No sealed doors. No urgent footsteps. Just ventilation humming through corridors that Ethan had complained about since his first day. 3 days later, Veolyra stood before the assembly beneath the same crystal arches where she had chosen him. Ethan waited near the rear wall, not beside the throne, not among the nobles, near a maintenance panel. Of course, Veolyra almost smiled. The royal bond law was created generations ago to preserve political stability, she told the assembly. Instead, it allowed tradition to become permission for others to choose our lives. She placed her hand on the translucent circlet around her wrist. A bond without freedom is not loyalty. The chamber remained silent. Effective today, the royal bond statute is abolished. A soft metallic click sounded as she removed the circlet. Across the hall, Ethan looked down at his own. Its light faded. The agreement was over. No obligation remained between them. The assembly rose in formal acknowledgement, but Ethan did not wait for the ceremony to finish. He quietly walked toward the western doors. Veolyra watched him go. For several seconds, she remained beside the throne. Then she stepped down. Ethan. He stopped. Hundreds of faces turned with him. Veolyra crossed the marble floor until only a few feet separated them. You are leaving. My contract ended about 30 seconds ago. You counted. I like accurate paperwork. That earned the smile she had been holding back. Where will you go? Terran Station first. After that, somewhere with simpler ventilation. She looked at him for a long moment. When I selected you, I thought I was choosing the least powerful man in this room. Ethan glanced toward the watching nobles. You were probably right. No. Veolyra shook her head. I confused power with the desire to possess it. Ethan said nothing. She continued more quietly. I chose you because I needed freedom. You stayed when freedom was already waiting for you. The hall seemed enormous. Around them, Veolyra could hear the soft pulse of the climate system, the distant movement of ceremonial banners, Ethan's measured breathing. She extended her hand. Not the formal gesture of a princess offering a bond. Just an open hand between two people. There is no law between us now. No council. No contract. No title that requires anything from you. Ethan looked at her hand. That sounds dangerously reasonable. I have been spending time with a maintenance technician. Bad influence. Apparently. Her golden eyes softened. Stay because you are free to leave. Ethan did not answer immediately. That mattered to her. A real choice deserved silence. He looked toward the open doors. Beyond them waited the landing platforms, the Terran station, and every road he could take without asking permission from anyone. Then he looked back at Veolyra. He placed his hand in hers. I can stay a while. Veolyra smiled. How long is a while? Ethan glanced toward the ceiling vent. Depends how long it takes me to fix this palace. Her quiet laughter traveled beneath the crystal arches. Months later, historians would write about the constitutional reforms that followed, about the council investigation, about the princess who ended an ancient law. They would write pages about Commander Nathaniel Ethan Cole and Helios Gate. Ethan disliked every version. He preferred a smaller memory, a silent hall, an open door, a teal hand waiting without demanding. He had crossed half the galaxy trying to become nobody. In the end, that was exactly why she finally saw who he was.